Sorry to Bother You, which is this sort of extraordinary satire from Boots Riley set in an alternative version of contemporary Oakland. And the best way of describing it is if you imagine, Terry Gilliam's film Brazil, which was sort of like a dystopian future, but it was also like a retro future. So it was a vision of something that seemed eerily prescient, eerily present, but it was a future, but it seemed like the world in which we live. Well, in the case of this, it's a version of the world that we know, but it's just twisted and wonky enough to have a sort of science fiction inflection to it. Young man, played by Lakeith Stanfield, is living in his uncle's garage with his girlfriend, played by Tessa Thompson. He's a bit of a wastrel. He hasn't particularly done anything extraordinary with his life. She, however, is an artist who does performance art and gallery art. And she moonlights as a graffiti artist with this anti-corporate collective called Left Eye. But she earns a minimum wage living as a sign twirler, people who stand on the side of the streets and twirl signs, which has become, weirdly enough, its own form of performance art. The way in which you twirl signs has become quite extraordinary. So in this world, the most popular TV show is a show called I Got the Kicked Out of Me, which is literally a television program of people getting punched in the face. And there are adverts for this thing called worry-free living, which is essentially voluntary imprisonment, that you sign yourself over to worry-free living. They give you a bed to sleep in something which looks like a prison cell. They give you 3 square meals a day, and you have to work on a production line. So it is essentially something that looks exactly like slavery. It's modern slavery, but with this kind of quirky voluntary element to it. As I said, this is a satire. It's like the real world, but slightly removed from the real world. Anyway, our anti-hero, as I said, that Brazil thing about posters, don't suspect a friend, report them. Anyway, so our anti-hero's uncle is starting to think that he is so hard up for money that actually he started to consider worry-free living, because the adverts make it look like, hey, it looks great, 3 square meals, and they take care of all your health issues and all the rest of it. And he says, no, I will pay the rent. I'm behind on the rent. I will pay the rent. So he takes a job in telemarketing. They give him the job immediately because they say, well, you've got initiative and you can read. So basically you can do telemarketing. And on the first day on the job, he's cold calling people and can't get anywhere until a co-worker, played by Danny Glover, teaches him a very important trick.
Hey, young blood, let me give you a tip. Use your white voice.
Man, I ain't got no white voice.
Oh, come on, you know what I mean. You have a white voice in there, you can use it. It's like when you pulled over by the police.
Oh, no, I just use my regular voice when that happens. I just say, back the up off the car and don't nobody get hurt.
All right, man, I'm just trying to give you some game. You want to make some money here? Then read the script with a white voice.
People say I talk with a white voice anyway, so why ain't it helping me out?
Well, you don't talk white enough. I'm not talking about Will Smith's wife. I'm talking about the real deal, like this young blood.
Hey, Mr. Kramer, this is Langston from Regal View. I didn't catch you at the wrong time, did I?
So immediately there's a device which is that the white voice is an overdubbed voice. And in fact, some point later on in the film, somebody says, wow, you actually sound overdubbed, which is kind of self-reflexive gag. So he starts using the white voice, and the next thing is he starts climbing up the chain. He starts getting sales. He starts, racking up the scores. And people keep talking about this thing about becoming a power caller, which is the next stage up. The stuff you're selling now, that doesn't really make money. All the encyclopedias. If you become a power caller, that's the thing. So the film starts to become a parable about climbing up the greasy pole and what you have to do to climb the greasy pole and who you have to sell out and which ideals and morals you have to put behind you in order to do that. Now, from the very beginning of the film, there is this surreal element. I mean, it's initially sort of slightly in the background. As I said, it's like the television adverts. It's the thing about worry-free. It's that television program. When he first starts doing the cold calling, there's this very kind of Michel Gondry-esque physical metaphor joke that he's sitting at his desk and he cold calls somebody, and the next thing is his desk falls into their room. So he's right there in the room with somebody who he's just ringing up who's having their breakfast, or somebody else who he's cold called who's actually in a more intimate situation, or somebody else who he's cold called who's in the bathroom. And so the visual gag is that his desk literally falls in. So you get the idea that the film has a kind of surreal physical metaphor thing going on. And as the film progresses, it starts to become more and more outlandish. You meet Armie Hammer, who is this sort of coke-snorting CEO of the power callers, who is this like demonic, messianic figure, who has a kind of strangely seductive air in much the same way as Ron Perlman in the Last Supper. And then, at a certain point in the film starts to take left turns that are completely unexpected. And without giving anything away, I think you can say that the comparison points would be if you think of a film like, for example, Lindsay Anderson's Oh Lucky Man, which is the middle of the trilogy, which begins with If and ends with Britannia Hospital. That's a story which begins as somebody, as a traveling tea salesman, and then goes off into completely different and weird areas. Or if you think of a movie like, and I know this will leap immediately to your mind,
yes,
you think of a movie like Brian Yuzna's film Society, which is a film which starts out as a satire on class and a satire on privilege and a satire on the way it is that rich people are not like you or I, that kind of, the Fitzgerald thing, and then takes that and turns it into some kind of completely bizarre physical metaphor, which is what an awful lot of body horror movies, Cronenberg, or a movie like Tetsuo the Iron Man were doing. They're taking ideas and they were sort of representing them physically. And so the film, right from the very beginning, it tells you that what it's going to be doing is taking ideas and representing them as visual metaphors. So as the film then becomes increasingly sort of strange and weird and wondrous. I mean, some people have said it's a film of two halves. It's a film which moves along like one kind of film, and then something happens and it turns into another film. I think that's actually not true. I think everything that happens in the latter half of the film, which is weird and crazy and inflected by genre filmmaking, is all set up at the beginning. And the skill of it is that the change of tone from one to the other, from comedy to horror, from something which is sort of slight socio-political satire into something which is very, very clearly, an analysis of capitalism and exploitation and coercive capitalism and exactly what you lose when you sell out. And it makes that move in a way which is completely natural. Plus, it's very, very funny. I mean, right from the very beginning, the jokes are very funny. And as the film starts to get its hooks into you, and as it becomes more and more this kind of very weirdly adventurous physical metaphor analogy for selling out and for, capitalism, the jokes keep coming, but they just they become darker and darker in terms of their tone. And the film itself, therefore, kind of slides gently from being, what starts like a comedy film into something which is science fiction inflected or horror inflected or fantasy inflected, that, stream of surreal cinema. So I thought it worked really, really well. It began life as an idea, which Israeli had as a song, and then as a script, and then as an album, and then as a published script. And it's one of those passion projects that's been taken ages in getting it together. Sundance Lab assisted, and then, Sundance Sensation. And for a long time, there was a conversation about whether or not the film would get the proper release that it deserved. I thought it was really remarkable. It was really sharp, really funny, very adventurous, and reminded me of some films that I love, but also went off in ways that I completely didn't expect. And yeah, I thought it was really, really good. It's called Sorry to Bother You.